Hello everyone. Today I want to tell you some stories about cheating. The aroma of cinnamon and sugar clung to Clara like a second skin. For 8 years, the Sweet Surrender baking factory had been her lifeblood, a place where she felt both challenged and comforted. But the warmth emanating from the industrial-sized ovens couldn't thaw the icy guilt that gripped her heart. She'd cheated on Mark, her husband, with Victor, the factory owner. Mark was a good man, a salt-of-the-earth carpenter who built rocking horses for children and stubbornly believed in happily ever after. He was steady, reliable, and loved her with a quiet devotion that had always been enough until Victor Dubois was a whirlwind of passion and ambition. A charismatic force who'd inherited the factory from his father and transformed it into a booming business. He spoke of expansion, of new flavors, of conquering the market. He saw something in Clara, a spark that he claimed Mark was too grounded to notice. He praised her creativity in the kitchen, her innovative cake designs, and the way she handled the pressure of a demanding production line. It had started subtly, a lingering touch of his hand on hers when reviewing inventory. A shared laugh over a particularly disastrous batch of macaroons, late-night conversations fueled by coffee and the intoxicating scent of vanilla. Then, one rainy evening, after a particularly stressful day of equipment malfunctions and a demanding order from a celebrity chef, it had happened. One drink turned into two, and then into a kiss, and then into, well, Clara couldn't bear to think about the details. Now, she was trapped in a suffocating web of lies. She avoided Mark's eyes, her laughter sounded forced, and every kind word he offered felt like a shard of glass in her gut. She couldn't tell him. The shame was too profound, the potential damage too catastrophic. Working alongside Victor was a torment. He acted as if nothing had changed, his charm amplified by the unspoken secret they shared. He'd wink across the factory floor, his gaze a possessive brand that burned into her skin. Clara felt like a puppet, dancing to the tune of his manipulative whispers. One Friday, Victor summoned her to his office. "Clara," he said, his voice smooth as melted chocolate, "I have a proposition. A new line of artisanal cakes. I want you to head it up. New recipes, new packaging, complete creative control. And a significant raise, of course." Clara stared at him, her stomach churning. This was his way of solidifying his hold on her, of ensuring her silence and loyalty. I need to think about it," she stammered. That night, Mark surprised her with a home-cooked meal and a bottle of her favorite wine. "Rough week?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Clara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She wanted to confess, to unravel the truth and beg for his forgiveness. But the words caught in her throat, choked by fear. Suddenly, Mark pulled out a small, velvet box. "I know it's not much," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple, handcrafted wooden bird with intricate carvings. "But I made it for you. To remind you that you're free to fly, Clara. Free to be yourself." The unspoken words hung in the air. He knew. He must have seen something in her eyes, sensed the distance that had grown between them. The guilt finally shattered the dam of her silence. "Mark," she sobbed, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake." She confessed everything, the affair with Victor, the lies, the crushing weight of her deceit. The words poured out of her like scalding hot batter, burning away the facade she had so carefully constructed. Mark listened in silence, his face a mask of pain. When she finally finished, he stood up and walked to the window, his shoulders slumped. The only sound in the room was Clara's ragged breathing. After what felt like an eternity, he turned back to her, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. "I need time, Clara," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I need time to process this." The next morning, Clara went to work. The familiar scent of baking felt oppressive, suffocating. She walked into Victor's office, her heart pounding. "I can't take the promotion," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "And I can't work here anymore. I'm resigning." Victor's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Clara. A big one." "No," she said, meeting his gaze. "The mistake was believing that you saw something in me that Mark didn't. He knows me better than anyone, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn back his trust. Good luck, Victor." Clara walked out of the Sweet Surrender baking factory, leaving behind the aroma of cinnamon and sugar, the promise of success, and the bitter taste of regret. She didn't know if Mark would ever forgive her, but she knew she had to try. She had to rebuild the foundation they had built their lives on, one brick at a time. The baking may have been sweet, but real love, she realized, required a different kind of recipe. Honesty, forgiveness, and a whole lot of patience. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, Clara felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile seed of possibility planted in the ashes of her mistakes. The aroma of her guilt was gone, replaced by the faintest whisper of a new fragrance, one of humility and the promise of a new beginning. The second story. The incessant whir of the ceiling fan did little to soothe Amelia. The humid Louisiana air hung thick and heavy, mirroring the weight in her chest. Outside, the moss-draped oaks stood sentinel, their ancient wisdom offering no comfort. She stared at the chipped paint on the bedroom wall, a landscape of imperfections that reflected her own fractured soul. 10 years. 10 years she'd built a life with Thomas. A life of comfortable predictability, of shared dinners and predictable Saturday mornings spent tending to their roses. He was a good man, Thomas. Honest, hardworking, dependable. A man who loved her with a quiet, unwavering devotion. And she, in turn, had rewarded him with this. It had started innocently enough. Thomas, a successful oilman, had decided to charter a helicopter to survey a potential drilling site in the bayou. Amelia, feeling restless and cooped up, had tagged along. That's when she met Jacques. Jacques was a force of nature, a whirlwind of tan skin, salt-laced hair, and eyes that held the vast, untamed spirit of the Louisiana swamps. He navigated the helicopter with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, pointing out landmarks with a drawling accent that both irked and intoxicated her. He was everything Thomas wasn't: impulsive, unpredictable, and undeniably exciting. The subsequent flights became excuses. She invented paperwork needing delivery, urgent errands that only a helicopter could accomplish. Each flight was a clandestine rendezvous, a dizzying dance above the world she knew, a world that suddenly felt suffocatingly small. Jacques smelled of kerosene and freedom. He told her stories of his adventures, rescuing stranded fishermen, ferrying tourists through the bayous, even once participating in a daring, albeit illegal, alligator egg harvest. Each story painted a vibrant contrast to the beige monotony of her life. The inevitable happened, of course. On a secluded landing pad amidst a cypress swamp, surrounded by the chirping chorus of unseen insects, they kissed. And in that kiss, Amelia tasted a life she had never allowed herself to imagine. A life of risk, of passion, of raw, untamed desire. The affair had been a whirlwind of stolen moments, hurried phone calls, and the constant, gnawing guilt that threatened to consume her. The brief moments of euphoria were quickly overshadowed by the knowledge that she was betraying the man who loved her unconditionally. Now, staring at the chipped paint, she felt the truth bearing down on her. She couldn't live a lie anymore. The question was, which truth would she choose? The comfortable, familiar truth of her marriage, or the exhilarating, dangerous truth of her desire for Jacques? She found Thomas in the garden, pruning the roses with the same meticulous care he applied to everything in his life. He looked up, his brow furrowed with concern. "You okay, Amelia?" he asked, his voice gentle. "You seem distant lately." The words caught in her throat. She wanted to tell him everything, to confess her betrayal and beg for forgiveness. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she managed a weak smile. "Just tired, Tom. It's the humidity." He didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press. He knew her well, knew when to push and when to let her be. That was Thomas. He anticipated her needs, protected her vulnerabilities. He was her anchor in a turbulent sea. That night, Amelia dreamt of helicopters and swamps. She saw Jacques' laughing eyes and felt the wind whipping through her hair. She also saw Thomas's face, etched with worry and a quiet sadness she knew she had put there. The next morning, she made her decision. She drove to the small airport, the gravel crunching beneath the tires. Inside the hangar, Jacques was pre-flighting his helicopter, his movements fluid and precise. He turned as she approached, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Amelia," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I was wondering if you'd show." She took a deep breath, the scent of fuel and oil filling her lungs. "I have something to tell you, Jacques." He noticed the seriousness in her eyes and silenced. This can't happen anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't do this to Thomas. He deserves better." A flicker of anger crossed Jacques' face, quickly replaced by a resigned acceptance. He knew this was coming, he just hadn't wanted to believe it. He had offered her a taste of freedom, a glimpse of a life beyond the gilded cage she had built for herself. And she was choosing the cage. "I understand," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You do what you gotta do." He turned back to the helicopter, his shoulders slumping slightly. Amelia watched him for a moment, a wave of regret washing over her. She was leaving him, but she was also leaving a part of herself behind. As she walked away, the whir of the approaching helicopter grew louder. It was a sound that had once filled her with exhilaration, a symbol of freedom and escape. Now, it was just another reminder of her betrayal, a haunting melody carried on the humid Louisiana air. Driving home, the roses in Thomas's garden looked brighter than she remembered. As she reached over to touch one, she made a silent promise to herself and to Thomas. She had almost lost her way, almost traded a life of comfort and security for a fleeting moment of passion. But she was back now, grounded. and she would spend the rest of her days proving that she deserved the love he had so readily given her. The work would be hard, but it was a work she was finally ready to face. Because sometimes the most daring adventure isn't soaring through the sky, but planting your feet firmly on the ground and building a life worth living. The third story. The musty velvet of the theater seats scratched against Clara's skin, a constant, irritating reminder of the discomfort brewing within her. The play, a romantic comedy, was a blur of bright costumes and exaggerated gestures. She should be laughing, enjoying their anniversary date. Instead, her smile felt brittle, pasted on for the benefit of the other patrons. For David. David, her husband of 15 years, sat beside her, his knee bouncing nervously. He'd been like this all evening, distracted, on edge, perpetually checking his phone. He'd blamed a demanding project at work, but Clara knew better. She'd known for weeks. The whispers, the late nights, the vague excuses, they all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Lola Morrow, the star of the very play unfolding before them. Clara knew David admired her. He'd made no secret of it, buying tickets the instant they went on sale, talking about her performance in hushed, reverent tones. But admiration and this were worlds apart. The scent of lavender, Lola's signature perfume, wafted from the stage, a phantom presence invading the already suffocating atmosphere. Clara clenched her fists, trying to control the tremor that threatened to betray her. She had planned this date, this meticulously crafted evening, as a last-ditch effort to salvage what felt like a sinking ship. Now, trapped in this gilded cage of illusion, confronted with the living, breathing embodiment of her worst fears, she felt utterly powerless. During intermission, David excused himself, muttering something about needing air. Clara watched him go, his back stiff, his movements almost furtive. She knew exactly where he was going. To Lola's dressing room, no doubt, to bask in her radiant presence, to whisper sweet nothings while Clara choked on the stale air of their broken vows. She wanted to scream, to tear the velvet curtains, to expose the whole sordid affair. But she remained rooted to her seat, paralyzed by a mixture of rage, humiliation, and a heartbreaking vulnerability. As the second act began, Clara found herself focusing on Lola. She watched her glide across the stage, radiating charm and confidence. Lola was captivating, a whirlwind of energy and talent. But Clara saw something else too. A flicker of sadness in her eyes, a subtle hesitation in her smile. A vulnerability that mirrored her own. Suddenly, an idea sparked in Clara's mind, a desperate, audacious plan. She wouldn't confront David. Not yet. Instead, she would confront Lola. The play ended and the audience erupted in applause. Clara waited for the crowd to thin, then with a newfound resolve she made her way backstage. The air crackled with post-performance energy, a chaotic ballet of stage hands and actors. She weaved through the maze of props and costumes until she found the door marked Lola Morrow. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. Lola opened the door, her face flushed with exertion. She was even more beautiful up close, her eyes a startling shade of green. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm Clara," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "David's wife." Lola's face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I know," Clara continued, her voice gaining strength. "I know about you and David." Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the muffled sounds of the celebrating cast. Then, Lola finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "He told me he was separated." Clara felt a wave of anger wash over her, but she pushed it down. This wasn't about blaming Lola. This was about understanding, about finding some semblance of control in a situation that felt utterly chaotic. "He lies," Clara said, her voice firm. "He's good at it. But I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to ask you a question." Lola looked at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "He tells me he loves me. He tells me he wants to save our marriage. But he spends his nights with you." "So, Lola," Clara paused, meeting Lola's gaze directly, "which of us is he lying to?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, a challenge laid at Lola's feet. Lola's eyes searched Clara's, a deep, knowing look that resonated with a shared experience of betrayal. The answer, Clara realized, wouldn't come in words. It would come in actions. It would come in Lola's choices. It would come in David's. Leaving Lola standing in the doorway, Clara turned and walked away. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't be a silent victim anymore. The theater, once a symbol of her despair, had become the stage for her own awakening. The play was far from over, and Clara was finally ready to write her own ending. The fourth story. The rain was a relentless curtain, mirroring the storm brewing inside Amelia. She stirred the lukewarm coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic, a discordant note in the otherwise silent apartment. David was working late again, a familiar ache settling behind Amelia's ribs. It wasn't just the late nights, the increasingly rare dinners together, but the way he looked at her now, a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher hiding in his usually open gaze. That's how it started, really. Feeling unseen, unheard. A slow drift that led her down a path she never thought she'd tread. It had been at the farmer's market. She was wrestling with an overflowing bag of apples when he'd appeared, a strong, reassuring presence in his crisp blue uniform. Officer Miller. He'd helped her gather the scattered fruit, his hand brushing hers, and in that casual contact, a current had sparked. He was everything David wasn't, or perhaps everything David used to be. He saw her. He listened. He made her feel alive. The conversation started innocently enough, casual chats about neighborhood safety, the best coffee in town. But soon, they were meeting for coffee, then lunch, then stolen moments in his patrol car, the city lights blurring around them as they clung to each other, desperate for connection. The guilt was a constant companion, a gnawing beast in her gut. Every "I love you" whispered to Officer Miller was a betrayal, a dagger twisting in the back of the man she'd vowed to spend her life with. She tried to bury it, to justify it. David was distant, preoccupied. She was lonely, but excuses rang hollow in the face of her own actions. One night, the rain mirroring tonight's downpour, Officer Miller had confessed his feelings. He wanted her. He couldn't deny what they had. And in that moment, her carefully constructed dam had broken. They'd ended up in his apartment, the air thick with desperation and regret. Now, staring into the swirling coffee, Amelia knew she was at a crossroads. This couldn't continue. The lies were suffocating her, poisoning her relationship with David and corrupting her own soul. She imagined David's face, his trust, his love, and the guilt intensified, a burning brand on her skin. The key turned in the lock. David walked in, shaking the rain from his coat. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes etched deeper. "Hey," he said, his voice subdued. Amelia swallowed, her heart hammering in her chest. This was it. She couldn't live with the deceit any longer. "David," she started, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." He looked at her, a flicker of something, fear, in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. "What is it, Amelia?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She opened her mouth to speak, to confess everything, the words bubbling up, ready to spill. But then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his face changed. He stepped away, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "Yeah, I'm home. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. It's all going according to plan." Amelia froze, the blood drained from her face. What was he talking about? Who was he talking to? The guilt momentarily receded, replaced by a chilling wave of unease that he turned back to her, his face carefully neutral. "Sorry, work," he said, forcing a smile. "What were you saying?" But Amelia couldn't speak. The words were caught in her throat, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. She had secrets, yes, but so did he. And whatever David was hiding, it felt far more sinister, far more dangerous, than her own infidelity. The rain continued to lash against the windows, a constant, unforgiving reminder of the storm raging within them both. The truth, she knew, was about to break. And when it did, everything would change. But now, she wasn't sure which truth she feared more. The one she was about to confess, or the one David was so desperately trying to conceal. The fifth story. The scent of pine needles and damp earth clung to Clara like a second skin, a stark contrast to the lavender and vanilla that usually permeated her life in their meticulously curated suburban home. She sat on the edge of the bed, the floral duvet a battlefield beneath her fingertips. Guilt, sharp and insistent, clawed at her throat. It was a new sensation, alien and unwelcome. She'd met Jedediah, the lumberjack, at the farmer's market. He was selling hand-carved bowls and small wooden animals, his hands, calloused and strong, moving with a surprising gentleness. He looked out of place among the pastel linens and organic kale, a rugged redwood in a manicured garden. He'd asked her about the rose she wore in her hair, and his voice, rough as bark, had sent a tremor through her, Her husband, David, was a creature of habit, a successful accountant who found joy in spreadsheets and perfectly mowed lawns. Their life was comfortable, predictable, a well-oiled machine. He loved her in his own way, a steady, reliable love that felt more like a warm blanket than a roaring fire, but Clara craved a fire. She craved the untamed, the unpredictable. Jedediah was that fire. He was the smell of wood smoke and the whisper of the wind through the trees. He was everything David wasn't. Their affair had been a whirlwind of stolen moments in the deep woods. The rustle of leaves, the scent of sawdust, the raw, primal connection. It was intoxicating, a rebellion against the suffocating order of her life. She'd felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, her senses heightened, her spirit awakened. Now, though, the thrill had faded, replaced by a cold dread. She looked around their perfectly appointed bedroom, at David's neatly folded shirts on the dresser, at the framed photo of them smiling on their last anniversary trip to Napa. It felt like a stage set, a carefully constructed illusion. David was coming home early from work. He'd called, his voice unusually cheerful, to say he had a surprise for her. He was going to announce a promotion, she guessed, another rung climbed on the ladder of success. And she was going to have to look at him, at his kind, trusting eyes, and pretend that everything was all right. She could end it with Jedediah, she knew. She could confess to David, face the consequences, and hope for forgiveness. But which path was the right one? Which fire did she truly want to warm herself by? The sound of David's car pulling into the driveway snapped her out of her reverie. He was home. Clara took a deep breath and stood, smoothing down her dress. She walked to the window, the scent of pine clinging to her clothes like a guilty secret. As she watched David approach the house, his smile bright and unguarded, she finally understood the true cost of her rebellion. It wasn't just about breaking a promise, it was about betraying a trust, about shattering the fragile piece of a life she had carefully built. The door opened and David stood in the doorway holding a bouquet of wildflowers. They were simple, unpretentious, picked from the roadside, a stark contrast to the expensive roses he usually bought. "These reminded me of you," he said, his eyes sparkling. "Wild and beautiful." Clara's heart clenched. The truth, like the potent scent of pine, was almost too much to bear. She took the flowers, her fingers trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The wildflowers, a symbol of the wildness she craved and the unexpected beauty that could be found in simplicity, were a reminder of the choice she had to make, a choice that would define not just her future, but the future of everyone she held dear. The scent of lavender and vanilla filled the air, but beneath it, the faint but persistent aroma of pine lingered, a constant reminder of the choices she had made and the choices she still had to face. The lumberjack was gone, but the woods remained, and Clara knew that she could never truly escape the scent of what she had done. The sixth story. The air in Amelia's kitchen was thick with the scent of rosemary and disappointment. The rosemary was intentional, a desperate attempt to salvage the lamb roast. The disappointment, however, clung to everything, a miasma she couldn't scrub away no matter how hard she tried. This Sunday dinner, usually a haven of laughter and connection with her husband, David, now felt like a battlefield laid waste. For weeks, Amelia had been plagued by a nagging unease. Small things. David being unusually distant, glued to his phone with a secretive smirk, coming home late with vague excuses about work. She dismissed them, attributing it to stress. Until she found the lipstick. A shade of vibrant crimson, a stark contrast to the muted roses she preferred, clinging to David's collar like a brazen accusation. She hadn't confronted him immediately. She needed proof, needed to know if this was a fleeting indiscretion or something deeper. So, she did what any digitally savvy, heartbroken wife would do. She scrolled. Deleted emails, hidden messages, fragments of whispered conversations unearthed from the digital ether, and that's when she found it. A name repeated again and again. Genevieve. The matchmaker. Genevieve, the woman who had, ironically, brought Amelia and David together. They had been struggling to find their footing in the turbulent dating world of their 30s when a mutual friend recommended her. Genevieve, with her impeccable style, insightful questions, and uncanny ability to see beneath the surface, had been the key that unlocked their love story. Now, she was the locksmith picking the lock of Amelia's marriage. The lamb was burning. Amelia yanked it out of the oven, the clatter echoing in the strained silence. David arrived a few minutes later, his face etched with fatigue, a fatigue that now felt less like exhaustion and more like guilt. "Honey, I'm home," he announced, his voice lacking its usual warmth. Amelia didn't reply. She simply placed the crimson lipstick on the counter, its color screaming in the neutral palette of the kitchen. David's face paled. He knew. "Amelia, he started, his words tripping over themselves. "Genevieve." Amelia finished, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. The silence that followed was excruciating. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. It started innocently, he stammered, just lunches. Talking. She understood things I wasn't getting from. He trailed off, unable to meet her eyes from me. Amelia asked, her voice tight. The woman you built a life with? The woman Genevieve herself deemed your perfect match. He finally looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and something that looked suspiciously like need. It just happened. We connected on a different level. A deeper understanding. Amelia laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no amusement. A deeper understanding? You found a deeper understanding with the woman who makes a living understanding people so she can pair them up. The irony was almost unbearable. She had trusted Genevieve, confided in her, seen her as a friend. Now, she was the architect of Amelia's pain. David reached for her, but Amelia recoiled. Don't. Just don't. Amelia, please, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I love you. Love? The word felt hollow, a fragile promise shattered by lust and betrayal. How she whispered, her voice cracking. How could you do this to me? To us? With her? She knew what we had. She helped create it. David's shoulders slumped. He had no answer. There was no justification that could possibly excuse his actions. The aroma of burnt lamb hung heavy in the air, a symbol of the charred remains of their once perfect picture. Amelia knew in that moment that their carefully constructed life had crumbled. Genevieve, the architect of their happiness, had become the demolition expert of their marriage. Later, as David packed a bag, his movements clumsy and filled with regret, Amelia watched him, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. Their story, the one Genevieve had helped write, was now a very different kind of fairy tale. A cautionary one about the dangers of trusting too much and the devastating power of betrayal. And Amelia, left amidst the wreckage of her life, knew she had a new story to write, one where she was the sole author and no one, not even a matchmaker, could rewrite her ending.